All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of Elevating with Marcia. I'm your host, Marcia Hawkins, and today is November, I believe it's the 8th, and I cannot believe we are rounding into the final weeks of 2025. And typically, this is the time of year most of my podcasts will focus on setting yourself up for a productive year and ending the year on a great note. So today's topic, I'm going to be talking about rules a little bit, but I'm also going to be talking about, are you investing your time into your life or your talent? All right, let's get started. So I've been thinking a lot about what we do on a day-to-day basis, and I've done quite a few podcasts where I talk about the wasting of time, and time is just one of those commodities that we can never make more of. It's actually kind of scary to think if, how like when you go on a diet, they tell you to log your food intake and write down the calories and your exercise and kind of have a food diary, if you will. It's kind of the same thing you need to do with your time, because I'm looking, when my kids were little, I honestly do not know how I got done all that I got done between soccer and swimming and t-ball and baseball and karate and school functions and working. And, at that time, I think I had multiple rental properties. I honestly don't know how I did it. And I think if I had to layer that into my life right now, which I would give anything to go back to do, by the way. But just thinking about, where is the consumption of time going right now? And I really need to take an inventory of that, because I run pretty fast all day long, and right up to the time I shut my eyes at night. I'm usually in perpetual motion and usually quite productive. As I've mentioned on many, many podcasts, my 3 to 5 by index cards are something that is just a staple in my life. It helps keep me organized, helps keep me with my time management and so forth. But we all fall victim to some of the time wasters that we get caught up in. And I'm really probably going to try and sharpen my pencil a little bit when it comes to time in 2026. And I'm going to, the remainder of the year, I'm also going to do the same. But I do think it's important that we do a time diary and see where we are actually wasting our time. As you get older, and I'm getting older, I'm really starting to take inventory of where I'm putting my time. And it brings me to the topic of, in your time, are you investing just your time, or are you investing the talents that you have into your time? Because that's where I think the key to success lies. I know you can, it very easily waste time. We all do it. I'm guilty as charged. But I also think that we subconsciously waste time when we don't mean to. And social media is a really good example of that. It is just completely a waste of time. And it's unfortunately become a staple in running a business. You have to have it. And I'm trying to get myself, acclimated to, getting stuff done in the morning when it comes to social media, and then being able to get off it and not have to go back on it. But if I get a notification, someone's left a message, or, there's something I need, or I research, because I do research a lot on social media. But it's fascinating to me with the integration of artificial intelligence and social media, influencers, people. There's a lot of people that really have to be on there. It's their job, it's their career, and part of it I think is fascinating and great. And the other part of me is like, more digital, time consumers that we are stuck dealing with. And it's just something that I think we all need to take inventory of. The other thing about social media that's kind of interesting is how it kind of plays into our self-esteem, our ego. You look at some people, and I watch some of the, reels and, TikTok and all that. And sometimes I just absolutely cannot believe what I'm witnessing, what women my age and even older and even younger women, who will embarrass themselves to the level that they do. But I get it. Everyone's trying to become an influencer. Everybody's, you can make absolutely staggering amounts of money on the internet. But again, it comes down to, are you putting in your time on ridiculous stuff and it just so happens to be making you money? A, good for you. But B, I just don't know long term if that's sustainable. And to me, I would rather invest my talent into a business rather than all of my time. I would much rather be effective with everything that I do that produces a result versus putting just, bean counter, just putting in the time. Because to me, that's an employee mentality. And if you're looking, if you're a business owner or you're looking to start a business or you're a business owner who's struggling, I beg you to take a look at your time consumption and look at where you are spending the most of your time. I've done this on multiple podcasts where I talk about being able to take inventory of your time so that you get into just a pattern every day of doing the same thing when you're really not accomplishing anything. As a business owner, you really need to make the most of every day to ensure that you're not getting yourself into habits that you are going to have a really hard time breaking. And I know if you're a business owner and you're listening to this, you know what I'm talking about. It's so easy to fall into that trap. So think about what you're doing when you are running your business. Am I putting my time in or am I putting in my talent? I think if you can switch those out, you will be astounded at the amount that you can accomplish, how you can, improve your business, your customer relations, your products, your services, everything. Always ask yourself, am I putting in the time or am I putting in the talent? If you're putting in the talent, I can almost say with 100% certainty that the outcome of your day will be far more productive than if you are just putting in the time. And I think people sit at their desks. I think they sit in their car, whether, maybe they're on the road all the time. And I've talked to people that do sales on the road, and they were telling me one time, I was asking them if they had to fill out a report. I'm thinking of someone in particular. She was a pharmaceutical rep, and she was telling me, she goes, no, what I do is my iPad tracks me, and they're able to know if I'm at a medical office. So what I do is I just park there and I leave my iPad in the car or I take it with me, and it's right next to a shopping center. So I just, either leave it in my car or I go to the shopping center and maybe I'll walk through the building. And she was usually, as long as I'm walking through a building by 11 o'clock and I'm done by 2 o'clock, they're pretty much fine with that. And I thought to myself, imagine how successful you would be if you actually applied yourself with your talent and actually dropped your business card off at those medical professionals and really tried to drum up business for yourself. And that's a really good example. There's somebody who is putting in their time, and that is such an employee mentality. And when you're in sales, you may get a paycheck every month, but you technically are the facilitator of that paycheck. And so for you to just, kind of literally phone it in and not actually put the time in, it begs the question, it's an employee mentality versus an employer mentality. And I know so many people that have gone into business thinking it was going to be fun. They could set their own hours. It was going to be, 5 days a week. Anybody who is self-employed will tell you it is not 5 days a week. It is 7 days a week. You have to be committed to that. I mean, it's Saturday today, and I've already fielded probably 5 to 6 phone calls. I actually, when I'm done with the podcast, I've got 2 more phone calls I need to make. But that's what I want to do. I want to infuse my talent into my business. It's not about putting in my time. And then you might say, but you just said it's not about your time, it's your talent. That is very, very true. But you do need to put the time in as well. It's just you have to be able to differentiate. Are you putting in just the time, or are you putting in the time, but most importantly, putting in your talent? And we talked a couple months ago about a podcast that I did about rules versus goals, because I believe that when you set rules for what you want in your life, you are far more likely to accomplish them than if you just say you're going to, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. I'm going to start working out. There's not that level of commitment. So as we round out the last 6 to 7 weeks of the year, my favorite time of year is between Christmas and New Year's. I love to read Awaken the Giant Within. It's one of my favorite books. Very centering, it focuses me for some reason. And Tony Robbins gives multiple examples of how you can effectively communicate with people. It also gives you a lot of examples. I could go on and on about the book. I absolutely love the book. I love a lot of Tony Robbins's books, and I love a lot of self-help books in general. But the key, again, on those is you can read a book. You can spend the time. Time is the operative word there. You can spend the time to read the book. But what you need to know is whether or not you're going to put the talent you're going to extract the talent from that book and then apply it to your life. That's the key. Another one that I really love is The Awakening Course by Dr. Joe Vitale. Very quick read. I think I'm up to 36 copies of that book that I've bought for people because I find some parts of it, I skip over, I gloss over, but it really is about centering your thoughts and your beliefs into what you want to create for yourself. And it ties back to that rule versus the goal. I think a rule sets the intention and it makes it very clear on what you want to do versus a lofty goal that you might write down at the end of the year and say, I'm going to join Planet Fitness or Orange Theory. I'm going to start walking an hour a day. I'm going to lift weights. I'm going to lose 10 pounds. I'm going to cut out sugar. I'm going to cut out chocolate. And we get into all these resolutions. I just don't like the word resolution for some reason. And then, if you've ever worked in a gym, which I have, the first 3 weeks of January, everybody is just like gangbusters on their resolutions. And usually by the third and fourth week, they drop off and then they don't come back, or they come back. September's another good month for gyms. People, at the end of the summer, they vow they're going to start now. So the following summer, they're going to be in great shape. But unfortunately, usually by Halloween, if not sooner, most likely by Columbus Day, if not Labor Day, people have started to fall off the bandwagon again. So it really comes down to always just center yourself with the phrase, am I investing my time or my talent? And again, if you're investing your talent, there's going to be some time, but that is where you're going to be able to move the needle, move the goalpost, if you will, versus if you're just putting in the time. And I beg anybody listening to this podcast to really take inventory and think about it. There's nothing worse than going through an entire day, and then that day turns into a week, and then that week turns into a month. And that month turns into a quarter, and that quarter turns into a year. That year turns into a decade. I would never want to look back on even a day that I wasted of my life. There's so many people who are laying in a hospital bed or a hospice bed, or have been just delivered a diagnosis, or something tragic's happened in their life, and they would give anything for one more day or one more hour or one more week. So the moral of this whole podcast is just start putting the talent you have into your life. Tap into that talent. Get up in the morning and really dig deep and figure out what it is that you can do to accomplish, to achieve your rules, to have a better life. It really, when all is said and done, we are a sum total of our decisions, good and bad, but more importantly, take responsibility for the way you want to navigate your life. Stop blaming everybody else. Stop looking for somebody to blame. Stop being angry. Stop feeling like that your upbringing was the cause of it. Stop, looking for an excuse. Wake up, take inventory, apply your talents, and live your life. All right, everybody, that's it for today on Elevating with Marcia. I'm your host, Marcia Hawkins. I'll be back soon with another edition of Elevating with Marcia. Till then, make it a great week.